I'm here with Tod Mostero. He's the winemaker at Dominus Estate in Yountville, California. And I've been in this spot with you before at almost the same time of year. We're here in early June, and there is a big difference right now in the vineyard, which normally would have growth coming up over your head. Talk about the drought that is going on right now.
Yeah, that's true. In 2021 so far, we've had 13.9 inches, which is very different from the 31.5 inches that we'd normally have in terms of a historical average of precipitation. It's a very dry year, and this is coming as a second year after 2020. That was also very low precipitation. We had about 16.5 inches in 2020.
But there wouldn't be a better spot than this estate to talk about dry farming and the benefits of it. This site has been dry farmed since
it was first planted in 1838.
Okay.
In fact, many people ask, in a dry farmed vineyard, wouldn't you have an issue with dealing with drought? Because we don't add any water, we don't irrigate. And in fact, it's the contrary. Because we dry farm, the vines are particularly well suited to the conditions that we have this year. And that's because dry farmed vines have deeper roots, and their vessels, the physiology of the vine is very different from an irrigated vine. The vessels are tighter, and they're tighter and smaller because a vine transports its water through capillarity. And the tighter the vessels, the greater the capacity for a vine to pump water from deep within the soil. And so these small vessels make for a very dense wood, which is more resistant to drought conditions. So it will more effectively pump water to the system above. And we see that there's not a huge canopy here. There's not a lot of vegetative growth, not a lot of leaves. And that's a normal reaction of the vine to drought conditions, especially during spring. So the vine is adapting to the conditions of the year, which is great because it will make it more capable of getting through the summer. Because it has less leaves, it will be transpiring water less and will be conserving the water naturally in the soil. And we can see here that already the inner nodes, or the space between the leaves, is very short, and the tip is going to be drying out very soon and will be stopping its growth. And that is a bit earlier than normal. In June, we would typically have vines that grow and grow until about mid-July. We would be trimming, but we're not going to be trimming this year, at least not in this zone. And that time between the stopping of shoot growth and veraison, which is when the berries will turn color. So right now, the berries, which are just about pea size, are still green. Those will turn color at veraison at the end of July. And the time between the shoot growth stopping and the veraison, the longer that is, usually that indicates a greater year, a year with more color, more concentration, smaller berries. So we're quite excited about 2021.
So even though the vines look stunted or smaller or restricted in some way, they're actually in a balance.
That's right. It's the vine's natural way of adapting to the dry climate of the year.
And even though drought can cause some problems, the timing of the drought plays a role. If you get it early and then you're not met with high temperatures after the fact, it can be quite beneficial.
That's right. So if you have a dry spring, the vine adapts and better handles the warmer conditions later in the summer, versus a wet spring where you would have more growth. And if you had a hot, dry summer after that, you would have a greater demand, and you might have a difficulty meeting that demand, meaning the vine would want to transpire more water because it has more leaves, but you would be using up that water faster.
And then the balance also goes into the fruit. So you have quite a few clusters on here, but the clusters are not the usual cluster.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fairly small cluster, and where you might normally have 180 berries, this year we're at about 130 berries on average.
And you're even going to do a little green harvesting at some point just to pull that back if the conditions warrant it.
Well, what we'll do is we'll focus on these shoots, which are particularly small. Now, a small shoot can only support a small amount of fruit. So we will remove, of course, the third cluster and we might only leave a small single cluster, and that will be plenty for this small shoot. So that's how we will adapt to this particular year.
So 2021, exciting now, but we're still crossing our fingers.
It will all depend on the weather, mainly in August and September, which is the ripening period. And what we want to see is mild temperatures, slow ripening, and no excess.